local people, important issues. CBS 10 WILM's weekly focus on the Lower Cape Fear region. This is Byline Wilmington with your host, Don Ansell.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you tuning in. Well, it's election 2010, and we're the place to get the candid, revealing candidate interviews to help you decide how to spend your vote. Today, we begin with the contest for the new district court judge seat for New Hanover and Pender counties. In our next half hour, we'll feature the candidates for the 18th District State House seat. Democrat Susie Hamilton and Republican Beth Dawson will face off. But first, it's Chad Hogston, who is running for that newly created district court judge seat, joining us as our guest. Chad, thanks for coming in. We appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
Let's remind folks that these judges' races are nonpartisan, which means there's no party listing on the ballot.
That's correct. So if you decide to vote straight ticket, whether it's Republican or Democrat, you will not vote for our race. So that's important for folks to know.
What's the thinking behind removing party labels from judges' races?
Well, actually, it was partisan up to about the late 90s, where and then the legislature changed it to be nonpartisan. There's certainly rumors about why that happened. I'm assuming the general perspective is that you don't want your judicial figures to have or to espouse any type of particular issues, and I'm assuming that party affiliation might have some tendency to do that.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a political operative, and she said to me, it's like, let's pretend there's no party influence in these races, but we all know in reality there is. Would you?
Most definitely, and that, you know, I was at the polls every day in the primary during early voting and general election. One of the first questions people ask me is what my party affiliation is. I happen to be the Republican candidate in this race, so people deem that as important.
Do you think there's a difference in the way a Democrat might rule from the bench and conduct the courtroom relative to a Republican?
Possibly. Normally, Republican-oriented judges have a conservative type of philosophy, so that equates normally judicial restraint, not legislating from the bench, basically avoiding judicial activism from the bench.
And you're an attorney?
I am.
What type of law do you practice?
I do mostly criminal defense and traffic work, but I also do civil litigation. In essence, I'm in court every day, both district and superior court.
So what do you think is the most important qualification for being a district court judge?
Well, I don't think there's just one particular element that makes you most qualified. I think it's several. Obviously, experience is one of them. I have about 15 years of experience in district court, about daily experience. A second is your disposition. How are you disposed as far as in ruling on certain particular issues? Are you an even-minded, even-keeled type of individual or not? I think that's very important. Your philosophies about decision-making, all of those come into play about what type of judge you would be. I think that's very important. I think they're all on the same scale, actually.
And you would characterize yourself as that?
Oh, most definitely. In fact, I do a lot of criminal defense work in traffic, and I've been endorsed by the Cape Fear Fraternal Order of Police. So that just tells you, these are folks that I work with every day. These are the guys and the women that I'm actually cross-examining on cases, but yet they're supporting me in this race.
Because you're a defense attorney.
Yes,
yeah.
And they are supporting me in the race. Which
I noticed some of your campaign literature, and you have a lot of signs out.
Right.
It mentions conservative values, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, and some would say those are code words to communicate that you're a Republican without saying it.
I'm not scared about saying I'm a Republican. I'm very proud to be a Republican. I know that people want to know about that. They want to know what your values are. And
so you're not prohibited from saying you're Republican. There's just no designation on the ballot.
That's exactly right. Judicial Standards actually has a canon in place that allows you to affiliate with parties.
Why did you decide to run?
When I started law school, my aspirations down the road were to be a judge. But I thought that you had to wait for the proper time to do that. I've been practicing for 15 years. This open seat became available, and I thought it was the perfect time for me to enter the race. Also, being a Republican, normally district court judges, when the new seat is created, the governor is actually going to appoint somebody to that seat. And there's been a Democratic governor for many, many years, so my ability to be appointed is basically zero. So this is a
because that is a partisan decision.
That is extremely partisan. So the appointment process is just as political as the election process.
How many district court judges are there?
We have 8 right now. This will be into the 9th.
This is the 9th. Why did they create another one?
It's just needed. We have
volume of cases?
Most definitely, and particularly our criminal courtrooms are packed about every day. We have 2 criminal courtrooms going every day, Monday through Friday, and they are packed, and we need another one.
So what's fundraising been like?
Fundraising
and
probably...
how important is that?
Oh, it's extremely important because we have to get our names out there to be recognized. Oftentimes, judicial races are off the grid. They're not up there in the upper echelon of races.
It's not on the top of people's minds.
Exactly.
You can't talk about issues, really.
Correct.
By judicial standards.
That's exactly right.
So, so what do you do?
Well, you just try to get your name out there as much as possible, educate people about the judicial process and why actually judicial races are important to them. They're very important to you. Particularly district court judges. These are the type of judges that if you're going to be in court, you more than likely would be in front of a district court judge because they hear so many different things.
How's fundraising been going?
Fundraising has been going well.
How much have you raised?
You know, I don't know what the last numbers are. I think in the primary we raised about $48,000, and I haven't.
That's a significant number for a race of this genre.
Most definitely. And my opponent raised about the same amount as well. And as far as for the general election, we're assuming about the same numbers.
So I'm curious, the public doesn't get caught up in these races as much as the more political races. So where does your money, where did your contributions come from?
Across the board. Attorneys, housewives, police officers.
Even though people aren't interested by your characterization in these races, they're giving money?
Oh, most definitely. These people deem the district court race to be important, and so they're there to contribute.
Would you say that the majority has come from Republican sources, voters?
No, actually.
Or you wouldn't know. How would you know?
Well, I mean, I know the majority of people that are contributing. These are not strangers to me, but I'm getting contributions from Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated, everybody.
Have you done direct mail solicitation?
I have.
Yeah. And what's your target there? How do you decide who you're going to mail to?
You just determine what your base is and actually how much money you have to do direct mailing, because it's rather important or rather expensive. So, for example, a direct mailer that would go to, let's say, 30,000 people might cost you $15,000. That's a lot of money for one mailer.
What's your return?
I think my return was great because in the primary we won handedly. And so I think the return that we got was fantastic. We got an overwhelming response in the primary.
So are you going out, doing a lot of FaceTime, meetings, breakfasts, whatever?
Everything.
Yeah. And what do people ask you? What do they want to know about?
They want to know your experience. They want to know what kind of person you are. A lot of the times when I meet folks, it's kind of a one-on-one, kind of like you and I are doing. And after 10 minutes, they get an idea of exactly who I am and what I'm about. And that's the purpose behind meeting folks, is that very thing. Now, they might have some side questions, like party affiliation is one of them.
Is that a big question?
It is. It is. It's very important to the public. And if you go back to when it was a partisan race, Republicans were overwhelmingly winning these judicial positions. Okay, so most folks out there want a conservative-oriented candidate.
Is that true? Because there's been some long-standing Democrats that are district court judges.
Oh, most definitely. But you have to look at whether those people were originally elected or whether they were appointed or not. Some of these folks
they've been reelected if they've been there a while.
Either that or ran unopposed. No one ever opposed them because they were an incumbent, let's say. But from an election standpoint, prior to it being nonpartisan, conservative-oriented candidates for judicial positions won overwhelmingly. Most people want a conservative person in the judicial seat.
In Are you talking in this 5th Judicial District in New Hanover
I
counties?
think in this district certainly, but across the board in the state of North Carolina. That's what I have found. That's what the data shows.
Do people ask you when you go out and meet them, well, how would you vote or how would you rule if, and they give you a scenario?
Oh yeah, all the time.
And what do you say?
I just say, look, I can't really give you a ruling on this particular issue. You have to tell these folks, look, I understand your question. I know you want an answer to that. But as a judge, we sit up there and rule on particular facts, on particular case.
We all have filters and prejudices and ideas, philosophies. How do you abandon those and go into a court scene with a blank slate and to take in the information? How do you do that?
That's the duty of a judge. I describe it metaphorically as if when you put on that black robe, you're basically shedding all color of bias.
Is that all what?
All color of bias.
Color of bias.
Right. You're shedding all that, and you have that black robe on, and you're up there.
Is that possible?
Well, obviously you're a human being, so you have philosophies and minds, and
because
so
you said that district conservatives come to the bench with a particular way of approaching the office, and
most definitely.
And that is a predisposed way of.
That's right.
It's not blank.
That's exactly right. I think you're predisposed to certain things, but as a judge, in looking at the law that applies to a particular case, I think both me and my opponent would look at that from a non-biased perspective.
How do you think your campaign's doing real quick right now?
Oh, fantastic. Very energetic.
You expect to win?
I expect to win, most definitely.
By a big margin?
I won't make that call, but I hope to win by a big margin. The primary was indicative of it, but I hope we do.
Stay with us. Coming up, Chad Hogston's opponent for this new district court judge seat, Robin Wicks Robinson, will be here right after the break. Don't go away.
Thank you so much.